All right, so I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Finance Committee today, October 2nd at 8:35 a.m. And if we could do a roll call, Lisa Martin,
Yes.
Keenan Francois,
Here.
Kim Craven, I'm here. And from the administration this morning,
Brad is here.
Brad, thank you.
Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, Nancy's here too.
Thank you, Nancy. Thought I saw Kevin. Oh, no, we're just.
And Kevin's here too.
Yes, Kevin is here.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to get headphones to work. I didn't hear. Sorry.
Yeah, everybody's moving on the screen. And I think that's all I see today. All right.
There is no one on from the public.
Yep, that's what I was just, it's not about. So we will do the approvals. We are not approving any minutes today. There's no one for public comment. So the old business FY25, if we could just go and look at any of the past information. Nancy, do you have any updates for us? Any changes? Any from getting us up to speed on as an overview before we go in with any questions or discussions?
I don't have any changes to FY25 at this point. We're still in the process of completing the end of year report, which is basically due now, and that document gets uploaded to the state, and that's where they gather all the information about some of the reporting that you see online. So we'll be submitting that shortly. In addition, the E&D certification would be my next step, and that's pretty much ready to go, and I have to upload a number of documents to the state for that, and then they would proceed with going through a certification for the E&D. But other than that, I have no changes to the actual documents that we've had before.
Okay. Can you because there's been some questions, I just want to make sure there's clarity for everyone on the committee. Review the insurance situation so that I'm clear. We had to put up funding for insurance when you made the switch over, and there was an amount requested sort of in a holding pattern, if that's a correct term, that was in case there was something to come up, charges against it, and just if you could give a little background on that.
Sure. I think you mean the Minuteman Neshoba Health.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. So the district belonged to a health trust, which is a group of towns and districts that got together to purchase health insurance together. They have since disbanded. I believe it was during 2023 to 2024, they disbanded. As a part of that, towards the end of FY24, all the communities that were involved needed to pay a sum to the group so that we could pay for any potential run-out claims, because June 30th, 2024, there were outstanding claims with the health providers. It was unknown at that time how many claims there might be and what that amount needed to be. So they did it. They were conservative and asked for more than they thought they would need because they did not want to have to come back to the communities. At that time, which was at the end of 2024, we paid that out of two places. One was school choice revolving, because we had funding available there, and the general fund budget line for health insurance, we had funds there. It was around $1 million that we paid. I can give you the exact figures. I don't have them right in front of me. And about half from both locations. So half from school choice and half from the general fund. The group decided at some point later in 2025, it was, and I think it was after the new year, maybe actually closer towards the end of the year, that they were able to return the funds to the communities because they didn't need the run-out claims that they thought they might. So that was actually really good news. Those funds came back to the district, and after some consulting with the auditors and the state, I was told that was acceptable for me to return the funds that were taken from school choice to school choice. So we did that. It was around $536,000 added back to school choice from where it came. In fact, that fund we recorded as spent at the end of FY24, but the state would like us to amend our end of year report for FY24 saying that those funds are now returned, essentially that as if that didn't happen, as far as reporting purposes go. The other half of the money went in the general fund as a unanticipated revenue. So on the revenue report, you can actually see that I separated it out because it's a large amount of money, so that everyone could see that. It's not in the packet. I think it needs to be the revenue report. I apologize for that. I will get that to everybody, the final general fund revenue report. So that's really what happened with the funding. So the amount that was closed to E&D was, again, this was before June 30th, will go into E&D. The amount that was closed out to the general fund, will go into E&D as part of that closeout. I don't know if there's further questions about that or if that's...
So that was...
Oops. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Lisa. No, go ahead.
So that was about $500,000 that ended up in the general fund that
Correct.
will flow to E&D.
Yes.
Okay. Just so that I have that straight. Thank you.
Because it came out of, that amount came out of health insurance line in the general fund, so that's where it belongs, to go back into the general. And it can't be, that's really all that can be done with it. It's not allowed to be separated out in any way. It's just unanticipated revenue that came back. It's similar, like in addition to that, we also get other unanticipated revenue. We got a little over $200,000 from the collaborative back, and that's been happening every year. But any of those types of revenues that don't tie to any other purpose go to the general fund.
And then the funds from school choice, that was like a borrow from a line item that if it did go back to school choice, you could run short in that line item at any given time.
Well, the school choice revolving fund is where the funds from the state go for students that are attending from out of, so it's a revolving fund that's able to be spent by the school committee. It's about every year we've been planning to use some of that funding as part of our, it's not supposed to be a part of a budget. It's not supposed to be a budget line for the revenues, but that's kind of how I show it right now. So if you were to look at our projection for FY26, you'd see that we planned $450,000 from school choice. Those school choice students are less and less each year because we've not been accepting school choice students. So that fund eventually will, if we continue to use it more at a higher rate than we're depositing money from school choice students, it will eventually get to be unavailable. It'll be zero someday or something less than that.
Yeah. So much better explanation how you just did it is that it's not a fund that we can guarantee every year in perpetuity. It has an end point based on not allowing the school choice. So that money that went back into it, if it didn't go back in, wouldn't get replenished another way. So that was originally school choice money.
Correct. I mean, we do have school choice students currently, so we will get some funding for school choice. It's just not going to be as much as we plan to use for FY26. So we plan to use 450,000. We won't be able to deposit 450 this year based on our enrollments currently.
Okay.
So the run rate is a little bit faster, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yes. And what are the restrictions around use of those funds?
There is limited, there's not a lot of restriction on the use of those funds. It's something that gets appropriated by school committee. I would say since I've been here, we've used a chunk of it each year for health insurance when we need to. We've also, the finance subcommittee approved using it to offset any of the turf field lease payments. That because we were intending to use rental money for that, which we do, we'll use up any rental money or sponsorships or any of that type to cover that lease, but we still have that lease payment ongoing. So at the end of FY25, and I want to say it's around $70,000 or $80,000 we've been using of it each year to cover that lease payment.
Okay. And then do you use any of that for any faculty, paras, staff that you need, things of that nature? As
Not
usually. For that
usually.
at all?
No.
Okay. Kina, do you have any questions on that topic of FY25?
I was just going to ask, I believe you said it was around 435 that we're planning or that we're building into FY26 from the school choice revolving. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, it's 450.
450. Okay.
Yeah.
And is that
a portion of that 450 will be like the lease payment that I was talking about.
Okay. That's what I was trying to get clarity on. If that 450 included.
Yeah. And if we don't need it, for the past few years, if we've had enough funding for, say, health insurance is like the biggest health insurance and unanticipated staffing, like maybe things that come up during the year that we don't know that are going to happen. We could utilize it for. So if I don't need the 450, I don't use it. And what's happening there is that, and my thinking on that, and again, we can certainly discuss that. My thinking on that is because the fund is really essentially becoming slowly one-time money because we're not replenishing at the rate we are allocating. The less I use it, the better, obviously, because it'll be available for longer. There's been some discussion about paying off the turf field completely out of those funds. I don't know what Brad's thought is on that, but we have a lease payment, an amount due that would end the lease and we'd be done with it. However, using all the school choice funding might mean down the road if we need it for, say, a tough budget year, it's not less will be available.
So what's our, I know you say we're burning at this current rate, or if we use that whole 450, we'll be burning more than we're taking in. What is our take in annually? Because it's going down all the time, but like, do we have any kind of estimates on that?
Let me just take a quick look here.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay. I think it was around 300 that we got last year. I'm going to pull it up while we're talking.
Okay.
And some of it is from school choice. Again, those $5,000 per student that we receive for school choice students. And then some of that is, in addition to that, we get an allocation if they're a special ed student and there's special ed costs associated. So last year we got 323,000.
320. And the turf field you said is around 80,000 annually, or that we use from school choice to offset?
Yeah, the bill's 90 in the 90s, like 93,000 a year. I mean, a quarter.
Okay.
Sorry, a year. I apologize. 93 a year. And I believe there was, last time I looked, which was I think towards the end of last year, it was we owed about, I think it was just under 400,000 left. It may be less than that now. It's definitely less than that.
So the other items from, oh, sorry, Keenan, did you have any other on that particular
Nope.
piece of?
No, I think that's all I had. Thank you.
On that one, okay. So the rest of the '05 surplus, there were areas that we had talked about in a prior meeting, and just review again, areas that had money left over, and we had talked about some of the reasons why. Specifically, can you discuss any of those things, like strategies that were employed by the administration? I was just coming on during budget season. As you were going through the budget season last year, were there things happening with the FY25 budget that you were doing as an administration, in the school committee for that matter, because I wasn't on, as you were looking at the difficult situation that the towns were in, the things that you were requesting, were things intentionally done to really, curb spending, look at spending, things that were, not that anything's not necessary that you put in the budget, but things that you had put in that you pulled back to say, okay, we really wanted this. This is really important, but the budget situation is so fragile, we didn't do. Like, were there any of those conversations or things that happened that influenced the amount of budget surplus that happened with FY25?
Nancy, I can start with that if you want. You can
Sure.
certainly add if you'd like.
Yep.
So as far as FY25 goes, our strategy really wasn't any different than it had been in years past. We've always struggled with budgets in the district, like many regionals, as we all know. I won't bore you with the details on that. You all know that. So right around the late winter, early spring, we always go into what I would call a soft freeze, and asking admin to, both at the central office level, but also at the building level, to really look at what's necessary. And oftentimes, or I should say in years past, we had done that so that we could prepay things in the upcoming budget and essentially remove them from the budget, making our ask less. This year, we did not do that. We went into certainly a soft freeze, but we were not looking to prepay things. Because in looking at FY27 and what FY26 turned into, we knew that we were going to hit a really tight spot, especially in how much E&D the district had been using. So from our point of view, the goal wasn't really to prepay for FY26. It was to look at how can we replenish our E&D accounts, because again, we had used so much that it wasn't something, and E&D really is, the amounts never guaranteed, and where so much was being used, we had to look at replenishing that. And the district did go without. The district has identified 10 areas that we really went without, and some of these areas are necessary. I'll read through them quickly for you. We did not move forward with capital projects. We did not move forward with several technology refreshes. We canceled education and curriculum licenses. We moved several positions in curriculum programming to grants. We had several vacant positions in the district that, again, the district feels are necessary, but we kept them as vacant, and they are needed. Some of them still aren't filled for FY26. Individual schools went on a soft freeze in the late winter. Health insurance, we had some Medicare exit costs, unemployment. We did have a reduction in legal costs, which was certainly a great thing for the district. It was a non-negotiation year, but that being said, I was pleasantly surprised just due to the number of special education issues we had over the course of the year that we did end up in the black for that. We also had some savings in building and grounds with snow removal because it was a light winter. And then we reduced some of our distant learning costs, primarily in the areas of VHS and Spanish. So I think what was challenging was at the last meeting, I didn't feel as though what was being shared was totally accurate, and it was very difficult to respond in that meeting. But the district in no way, shape, or form felt as though that we were trying to hide money, or that the money that we ended up with was expected across the board. It wasn't. There were some things that happened in June, in some cases even July. Again, when the governor doesn't release their final budget, you never know really where you stand until that's done as far as what our needs were moving forward. But it's certainly a challenge, but our goal was to try to do our very best to replenish E&D, which is what we've done. That being said, the fact that we didn't prepay and we made such drastic reductions, we're in a situation now where I'm going to ask at least 2 buildings to do a staffing audit around special education paraprofessionals to see where we just to ensure that we're getting the appropriate amount of support. But there's struggles across the district. We're getting things are bubbling up in many areas. We knew these class sizes were going to be high. They are. In some cases, they're a little bit.
Brad, I want to have this discussion, but I know that we have to be a little bit careful of, well, I guess we could talk about it in this. I just don't want to go out of scope of one
Right.
item to the other.
I guess I can just finish it off that the fact that we didn't prepay for things put us in a situation where we couldn't fill some other areas of need. And we're struggling right now because of that. But that being said, we have replenished our E&D account, which really needed to happen because we can't keep moving forward and borrowing more than we can and then not replenishing that amount. Does that make sense, Nancy? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, and I think throughout the year last year, we also were very much aware of some challenges in both tuition costs and special education transportation. And when looking at that, we voted a budget transfer to those lines. So we were at times over $1.2 million off of what we budgeted. So throughout the year, we were watching that very closely. We did end better than I anticipated, but I'm really happy about that because that was sort of a looming amount out there. We did transfer almost $800,000 to those lines. So, looking at that
Right.
throughout the year, I think was another reason we were trying to hold back because we were unsure how some of these placements were going to end for the year.
And honestly, just to add to that, as you all know, special education placements are a moving target. You can be in good shape one month, and then within, a month, things can change drastically by hundreds of thousands of dollars just based on 1 or 2 placements.
Could I just add one piece? So I agree with everything that was said, but just because I think one of the points is a question of whether it could be repeated. From the buildings and grounds and technology side, one of the factors for us, in addition to what Nancy and Brad said, and trying to support the overall budget, so holding off on costs that like capital and refreshes that really are going to have to be dealt with. We also with the building plan being a moving target for a good portion of the year, we were making some strategic decisions regarding our budgets as well as our manpower allocation to which relates because of the projects we can take on to try to prepare for what the building moves were going to be. In the end, we were happily surprised that we did better financially with the whole moves, including setting up the Squanicook kitchen and the costs related to the move itself, because we ended up taking a lot of that in-house instead of hiring a moving company. So we were trying to save so that we weren't throwing off the budget with the costs for the changes, and we did better with the costs for the changes than we expected.
And I'd love to just review, and I'm sorry that we're like reviewing this multiple times with you, Nancy. There's unfortunately the folks, the person with the history decided to leave this committee. So you've got, Lisa does have some history, but you've got two new members. So we really have to ask a lot of questions of you. So sorry to be repetitive, but then if you layer in the fortunate position of getting some of the supplemental, how did that change some of the way that the budget looked from what you anticipated? How did that help the budget situation for you?
So for FY25, really, it's no impact. One big change, I suppose, that what happened was that they increased the amount of circuit breaker funding, which they reimbursed us for. They covered a larger percentage of the transportation costs for special education, which is great. I think that was a lot of the advocacy that went on around transportation. So we ended up getting another $302,000 in circuit breaker funding. And that fund is a fund that comes every year as a result of reporting to the state our tuitions and transportation costs, and then they reimburse us in that fund helps cover sort of unanticipated tuition or transportation costs for special education. So when the funds arrived, they arrived in July of this year. They didn't even come in FY25. They came in July. And we were given the option to either use them for FY25, which we didn't actually end up needing, or deposit them in FY26. So either way, it was acceptable. They sent us an email on that regard and said, sure, you can use it in either fiscal year. I elected to put them in FY26. This is 302,000 addition. So for my understanding right now is that there's additional guidance they're going to give us on the use of those funds, but really with the circuit breaker funding, it's again similar to the school choice revolving. But it's for special education specifically. That fund rolls each year. You're only allowed to roll over and from any one year to the next year, the amount equal to what you received that year. So for FY25, we received, let me see if I can pull it up here. So for FY25, we received $2,907,000. So we could have rolled over $2,907,000 if we didn't have expenses associated with it. We rolled $1.5 million. So we're under. We have traditionally been trying to roll the entire amount so that if we have an unanticipated cost in a future year, we have that fund available. This is a long way around the bush, but basically what we're unsure of right now is for FY26 if they're going to add the 302 to our number and let us roll that, or whether they're going to require that be spent down. And the reason that's important is really it's our cost for the tuition and the transportation are spent from either the general fund or the circuit breaker funding. So depending on how we end the year for FY26 with tuitions and transportation, we may have more in the circuit breaker fund, which would be good. We could boost that back up, or we may end up using less in the general fund depending on what the final numbers are. So it's really just between the two. It's like I look at it monthly. I look at the tuitions and where we are compared to budget monthly on that. Go over it, check against the placements. Special ed department keeps a record of all the placements they have and the costs and what's changed. So we compare notes really once a month. So the 302 is still available. It's available to be used for cost of special education. And it's not gone or anything. And the other supplemental that we received was additional Chapter 70 money for FY26. I think we've spoken in another meeting about that. The FY26 budget had 100, I believe it was 150 per student that they ended up giving, and we didn't budget quite that high. So we had some funding available, 220,000 or 224, I think it was, for the Chapter 70 money. However, our assessments also increase, and an assessment is really the state charging us back for certain costs. And there are two major ones that we budget for in the budget. It's down at the end of the budget. One is charter school assessments, so costs that really they hit our Chapter 70 for some of the charter school costs. And the other is school choice students attending other districts. So really it becomes an offset. So our school choice coming in, we get to record in the revolving fund. School choice going out, they hit our Chapter 70, which you see in the budget. So those numbers went up significantly as well, almost to the point where we're actually have a deficit for those accounts between the whole budget. So I think that unfortunately we aren't able to just say, hey, we have 224,000 more, because now we have costs that we didn't anticipate on that assessment side. So that's why I haven't reset the budget yet. Now, sometimes those assessment numbers change, and again, the state gives you an assessment based on anticipated enrollments in these placements, like in charter school and school choice out. Those can change, so we periodically update it, especially with the October 1st numbers being submitted by all the schools. Occasionally those numbers can change, so we may end up having a little room, but right now I don't know that.
So while the funding in didn't necessarily increase the budget, it helped to steady the budget based on the increase in the assessments.
Correct.
Okay.
We probably will at some point. Well, I guess I don't say probably. If everything's going along okay and those assessments comes down slightly, I think we wouldn't need to revote a budget. But if it becomes that there's a significant change, I would definitely suggest revoting the budget using the 224 and adjusting those assessments. But again, that might not happen in time for the towns to gain any. And again, these are small dollars, so if we had a change of 224,000 for the budget, it wouldn't, 50% for Pepperell, 40% for Townsend, basically. It's not a lot of money in making it available to the towns.
Yeah, in keeping on, on that thought process, while it's not a lot, if it is something that is possible, we should definitely consider that. And whenever you have the information that you need to make that choice, to be sure of where the numbers are. Because what I don't want to do is say, yeah, okay, we're good, and vote at the school committee level to do it, and then get tied up later on. That's not good for anybody either. But if we feel that the school can operate, the funding is there, and we can give those dollars back to the municipalities with the ratios that you discussed, how it would affect their budget in a small way. It could mean, something fairly significant to their budgets at this time. So let's keep that, discussion open and looking at those numbers, as frequently as we can with the information, coming back to
And that has happened in the
the
past.
committee. And, yeah.
Yeah.
That's really helpful.
Sure.
Appreciate you keeping on that. So I'm, doesn't mean that I won't come back with additional questions, but again, just wanting to make sure that I have a solid as understanding as possible as we move forward, because what's happened in the past is going to reflect the future. What I'm most conscious of, because I don't want to use concern, is that if there were things that were delayed and things that were helpful, there's some things in there that out of our control. Snow, if you save money on snow this past year, it could be completely different and totally out of your control in the year coming up. And then some of the things that you might have needed, like curriculum and license, how does that impact the learning environment? And what does that look like now for those purchases? And how will those be handled? Any impact that we need to be thinking about? Obviously, if there's money in the E&D, I'm guessing that's, and correct me if I'm wrong, if it's a similar situation that we have on the municipal side, if we have a horrible snowy winter, we can access free cash on the town side for snow and ice removal. Is that the same on the school side if things go horribly wrong? Otherwise,
We could do that, yes, if it was certified. Once that number is certified, we haven't really done that in the past, but it could be done. The school committee has control over voting. Once that's certified, the school committee gets to decide how that E&D is used. Traditionally here, we've just used it for a future budget year. But if we did have an emergency or a boiler go or a snow and ice problem, we could access it.
okay. Thank you.
Nancy, does that, if we did use out of that fund and the committee approved it, does it have to go back to all three towns and they have to approve that we use E&D for it?
Yeah,
Or-
yes, it would. What would happen is if we, in the example of the snow and ice, if we had to increase the cost of snow and ice, we're really restating our budget, even though the towns, if we funded it with E&D as an example, the towns would have to accept the budget change, even though there's no cost change for them in that scenario. So a school committee would revote the budget higher on the snow and ice, higher in the use of E&D, and towns would get notified about that. I don't foresee them saying no, but it's no fiscal impact for them, but especially if it were in that scenario where there's snow and ice costs.
But that could be applied to anywhere if we had to use E&D in a different fund or a different line too.
Yeah. I mean, my guess is that we would probably leave the E&D alone and use, say, a revolving fund if we ran into a problem. Like we use the school choice revolving if the school committee wanted to use that instead. There's no need to restate the budget in that case. We just charge some snow and ice to school choice and you guys say, yep, that sounds like a good plan without having to notify all three towns and go through that process. The budget, the E&D vote usually happens when we vote our budget. So when we do the FY27 budget, we would include whatever the final budget is for FY27, we would supplement with whatever the finance committee and the school committee decide is the right number to use towards that budget year. That's just how it has worked. Doesn't mean it has to be that way, but that's generally how we've done it. So we give back, that's one thing that has come up before with E&D is we're allowed to have by statute, we're allowed to have no more than 5% of the future budget year in E&D. Actually, interestingly, we just had our Moody rating call we had to renew a bond, which you'll see in the next school committee meeting. And when we renewed it, one of the things that he brought up was the fact that other states have way higher reserves numbers for schools. Massachusetts put a cap of 5%. Some of the other, like in other states, they had, 30% reserves, which is interesting. He said that's just, and I get it because the towns have reserves also. So as a regional school, we don't, maybe in theory, wouldn't need that, but maybe other states do it differently. So it was just kind of an interesting aside. So anyway, putting it towards the budget gives it back to the towns because otherwise the budget would be higher. So that's how we replenish, or if we're over more than 5% over next year's budget, that's how we've been handling it.
And that's how the collaboratives handle it too. They can only carry so much over and they have to give us back money or the
Similar, yep. I think theirs is higher. I forget what the amount is that they can carry. Brad, do you remember that? They can
No,
carry
I'm not sure.
it's higher, I believe, but than 5%. But anyway.
And what did we get back from? Is it the Valley we only get stuff back from, the Valley Collaborative, or that we get money back from?
The past few years, yes, Valley we have received some money back from Valley, not so much with Keystone. There hasn't been a return there, but again with Valley, that's also a moving target. I would say that Valley does a nice job managing and making sure that they're transparent with all of its members. And it's always nice to get something back from them, but it's not a guarantee, as you know.
Yes. And that amount changes because like there's been years we haven't gotten anything back.
Correct.
And this year, how much did we get back from them? Like, Nancy, you're on mute.
You're muted.
Sorry, I have way too many windows open here. So we got around just over 200 to something. I was just going to pull it up for the revenue.
Do you have a sheet of what we've gotten back from them in the past, like a running history?
I could pull it. It's separately called out generally on my revenue, so it's pretty easy for me to get that data.
I don't need it now, but I'm thinking like in the future so that we can just be transparent what we've gotten back from.
Yeah, it's one of the areas that it's unanticipated revenue that comes in that ends up boosting up the E&D number. So I think you'll see that.
All right. If there's no more questions on the 2025, I'd like to move forward to the 2026 and review the balances and sort of where you think we are now that we're into September. I know it's a little bit hard because it's just the closeout of the first month with students back, but just perspective on that.
So I've included in the packet the latest FY26 budget to actual, and that document I think most of you are familiar with, but what I usually do with that is there's a column called anticipated expenditures. I try to make my best guess as to where I think we'll end the year. And right now I feel there's a couple of areas that are definitely we're doing well in. We're doing better on the tuition side for special education right now. And in addition to that, we'd had the opt-out program for health insurance. I think if you're familiar with that, we essentially are paying for those families or individuals that want to jump off our insurance, and they get a I want to say a stipend, but it's not a stipend. They get a payment for opting out, and it's a 1-year program that the school committee voted. That's doing well. We budgeted 277 staff to be on health insurance, and we're at, sorry, is it 271, Kevin? think it's 271. We just grab that. Yeah, 271. So we're 6 below, which is that's a good savings. We had 9 individuals opt off insurance, 8 families, 1 individual, and that savings. So theoretically we should be 9 under, but we're actually 6 under because 9 people jumped off, but 3 people jumped on, as an example. So that still moves around as the hires are still getting settled, but the savings should be just over 200,000 for the opt-out program. So that was, I think, that's a positive of what's happening on the health insurance side. We've had a lot of transfers. The retirees, there were 11 retirees at the end of 25. And there's obviously people moving in and out since due to some of the shifting. So a little bit more transition for staffing this year, I would say. And I think that's been relatively true since COVID. A lot more people coming in and out. There's still vacant positions. I have mostly a good amount of just general assistant vacancies, but we also have some speech vacancies. We've had to hire some contracted services to cover some of those services because we are not able to hire. Custodials still has a position open. They've changed their model because they just have less options to hire staff. So they're trying to use part-timers in some places where they can get part-timers, somebody taking, not a full-time position. So some of their positions have shuffled a little bit, but basically I think they're still doing pretty well as far as overall costs. And I also, let's see, so those are kind of some of the good things happening. We have at the moment a bus savings, so that's good. I don't know, Brad, if we've heard any more. I have not had a lot of issues around the busing at all, so I haven't heard any chance that we're going to have to have another bus come on board. Have you heard anything, Brad, on that?
I have not. I know that that they were using an afternoon bus as of 2 weeks ago. I do have to check in with Tammy on that to see if that's still running. But again, that's just one run as opposed to 3. And we do have that one bus savings, which is helpful. But honestly, this has been a very, very smooth year with regard to busing. The buses are getting to and from school on time. I couldn't be happier.
That's great.
It has never been like this before. So it's going very, very well.
Yeah, so overall, if you're looking at the budget summary that was in the packet, I'm plugging in, again, I'm probably understating some areas, overstating others, but there's staffing available still. And again, some of that's due to shuffling of positions or a new hire coming in at a lower rate. But there is a substantial amount of those. I tried taking a look at whether there was some easy way for me to present, the changes, but they're significant. So it would literally be a significant amount of work to go and say this person went here and their salary was lower. So I kind of look at it from the 30,000 foot view, like how are salary costs altogether and who are we still needing to hire? Brad's had mentioned a few areas where we think there might be changes. I don't know, Brad, if you if this makes sense to talk about it here or.
So it's not anything that we're ready to act on right now. We are, as I said, we're going to be asking principals specifically within the programs at the elementary and even the middle school level to essentially do a staffing audit with the special education department to see if we are optimizing the staff that we do have. That being said, to say that I'm not concerned would certainly be false because I am concerned about our current class sizes. And when I talk about class sizes, just our general, class sizes across the board are a concern. And there's certainly concern with, if we're going to move forward in FY27 as we did in FY26 and potentially look at even more cuts. I'm not sure the district will be able to sustain that. Just because of the current situation that I shouldn't say the district will not be able to sustain that because, central office staff were over at Nissitissit last week and we're walking through 7th grade classrooms with 32 students in them. For those of you familiar with 7th grade, that is a very, very difficult number of students to have in a classroom. Some would consider it the most challenging grade level there is. Just because of, the makeup of students, changes, adolescents, things of that nature. It's a challenge. And again, in having our first preliminary meeting with the towns, it doesn't look like much is going to be changing with regard to what the towns are asking us. That 2.5% levy is a zero, less than zero for us, most likely. So moving forward, again, getting that E&D up was very, very important. But we may have to address some areas this year with staffing, which is a concern because I know the towns are also stressed with their with town staff, whether it be town halls, police, fire, DPW, you name it. I know that everyone is, in the same situation or reporting the same situation the school district is. So I certainly want to be very cautious if I'm asking to add positions during the school year.
So the other area that I'm kind of watching closely is our heating line, which I think is under budgeted at the moment. If you take a look at that section, it's down just on page 18 of the detail. But we budgeted $461,000 for heat across the district, and our POs and our anticipated expenditure based on last year's is $599. So we have about $140,000 short in that area. I believe, and again, until we are further into the year, I believe we'll be able to cover that with potentially the electric side, but I won't know that for sure until we're a little further along. So that's a little area I'm watching. Capital, I think we're still working on developing how that's going to be spent. There is a capital plan. It probably needs some dusting off. I don't know, Jeremy, if you and Dave had spoke about that this year on the use of that. It's lower. The capital projects that we had budgeted were only right around 150,000. So I'm sort of assuming that will be fully expended. Let me see if there are other areas. I think that's it. We have some health insurance is close. We're about 260,000 we have available right now. That can change really quickly with a few people jumping on for benefits or people jumping off. So we will continue to look at that. But if it turns out that the bus is not needed and we will not be billed for that at all this year, that would be another area that we could actually include if we did a recertification of the budget, which would help the towns. I don't know if there's any other questions on the FY26 right now.
So it does sound like that budget, the bus situation is something that could help the budget. I am concerned on the heating side. If we were going into it, 130,000 plus or minus short. I don't know how the warm weather right now is, if that's helping delay heating costs at all. But I know that, heating costs can be a wild card as well with the energy costs rising. So how sure are you about the busing situation, Superintendent? When are you feeling comfortable on making a decision on that?
As far as the number of buses?
Yeah.
So I would just need to check again. There was a little bit of an issue with an afternoon run And what I'm not entirely sure of at this point, and Dee was not entirely sure of, is how much of that was due to the construction that was going on, because that did lead to some delays. But I can certainly check in with her. I know that a little bit of that savings was eaten into at least for at least a week or two, but it was not, again, it was not all 3 runs. It was not morning and afternoon either. It was just the afternoon that was reported to me. So we can certainly check on that, but that savings, having to potentially add in a full bus is not something that Dee was thinking we would have to do. But we did want to give it a couple of weeks, and it's been just about a couple of weeks now, just to see if it was helping, if it was having any impact at all, or was this just a short-term issue due to the construction that was happening in Townsend?
And I do know that some of the construction is wrapping up, at least in Pepperell, like the bus routes are getting back to normal.
Something that was very challenging, just so you are aware of it, and if you're able to speak to your constituents on the town side, it would be helpful. We did not know that Townsend was going to be doing road construction. With Pepperell, we got several weeks' notice that it was happening. We got an email stating it was going to happen. We did not receive anything from Townsend stating that there was going to be road construction at the start of the school year, which really that's certainly a challenge, especially when busing for the first month is such a challenge to begin with, but having to deal with construction on top of that was certainly not helpful.
I can reach out to Veronica on my side and see if I can figure out what happened there. Maybe, in the best interest, maybe it just got lost. But
certainly,
who knows?
yeah. And again, I'm certainly not blaming
Valerie,
anyone.
sorry.
It's just more of an issue of, if we are able to communicate it, it's just helpful. It may not fix anything, and it may not change the outcome, but it is helpful just so we're able to problem solve, and we're able to give Dee a heads up. So thank you, Keenan.
No problem.
So what I believe needs to happen now that we're through sort of the first quarter of this budget, we have some town meetings coming up. We have our own meeting coming up. It's just starting to plan around for the FY27. So we'll need to do that at a future meeting. If there's, any other pertinent FY26 budget information that we need, please let us know that. I'll be interested to learn the staffing review. I know that was something that we were asking to really understand for the October meeting of the full board, if at all possible, but if not, for the next finance committee meeting. And, when I say for the full school committee to understand, is just where we're at, not to delve into the nuances of it, but just so that we are having an awareness of what is filled, not filled, and what might be needed. I don't want to go into it in depth, but then for the next budget meeting, if we have those numbers to help plan for the FY27 budget, that would be really helpful. Lisa and Keenan, anything else that you need for the FY26?
Not for 26. I want to try to be super brief and just jump back to 25 for one thing. I missed one thing when I flipped a page. I think this is for Jeremy. We had mentioned that due to the budget issues or whatnot, we had delayed a bunch of capital and tech projects. Is there just like a brief overview of what some of those are? Like nothing, no detailed specifics are needed, just like something that might, if we need to do it in 27, what are those items?
If I could just pause for a moment so I can grab those, I can get that for you momentarily.
No
But
problem.
if there's another topic that you guys want to move on to while I look that up, feel free.
Sure, we can start looking at our meeting dates. Keenan, what works for you towards the end of October?
So I am generally, as long as the meeting starts before, I know we traditionally, I believe, do 9 a.m. here. And we're going on an hour and a half in this meeting. So if as long as we start at 9 or before 9, any day I should be fine. Um, Afternoons are kind of a disaster for me. Uh, but let me just look at my calendar here.
And I hope we're only at an hour and 5 minutes right now. We started
Oh
at
yes,
8:30.
hour 5. Yes, sorry.
We did make him get up early, so.
Yeah, you did do that. My roommate wasn't impressed with my alarm going off at 7:30, I must say. Uh, on Thursdays or Tuesdays and Thursdays after 5 p.m., I can make work. I'd prefer not the afternoon, but I can make it work if I have to.
Yeah. So are you okay in the morning? And I'm going to defer to the administration for what they might have based on Keenan's morning time schedule for that last week in October. So if we stick with a Thursday, if you have something on that day, the 30th, the 20, I would say actually the 29th, 30th, 31st.
I cannot do the 29th. I have jury duty.
Okay. Civic duty. So the 30th or the 31st, I would say, are the days available in the morning. Does that work for the administration?
30's good for me.
I'm just double checking.
When is the half day for the school?
That's the 31st.
Oh, the 31st. Okay.
Well, we're looking at the 30th, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
It works for me.
I have no conflict.
And does the 8:30 work or 8? Sorry, Keenan.
I can make either work.
Same.
So do you want to make it for the 30th at 8 o'clock?
What works best for the administration, 8 or 8:30?
Honestly, either works for me.
I will put in the
Melissa?
selfish take for 8:30.
8:30.
Okay. All right. 8:30 it is on the 30th. All right. If there's nothing else, motion to adjourn.
Did you want me
Oh,
to
just want to hear from Jeremy. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry, Jeremy. Yes.
So Keenan, first, the broad answer to your question is no. I don't think there's a lot that we could do to mimic this in the future because most of it is when we're talking capital and refreshes, the specifics vary, but it's all basically kicking the can down the road. The work still needs to be done. In this case, some of it we took advantage of the changes we were making because we had the ongoing Ashby discussions going on. A significant portion of the plans, whether it was directly through the capital fund or some of the refreshes, were Ashby focused because we had that momentum in place. So we obviously put holds on those. So Ashby floors was on the list, as well as control systems for the HVAC system was on the list. CCTV cameras and access control, which is basically security systems for Ashby, was also on the list. And that one was fairly significant. That was looking like it was going to be about $100,000 because of increased costs of the copper and the wiring and things like that. We also had pathways at Spalding that we were going to be building for kindergartners walking around through snow because kindergarten was moved over to Squanicook. We cut that. We put a hold on a portion of the Chromebook refresh. We reduced how much we were purchasing there because we were trying to reduce Chromebooks in the district in general as a budget cut. So we were reducing the refresh plan to take steps ahead of time on that. We also did not replace, we replaced the network switches across the district. Part of that, we did get E-rate funding that covered a lot of that cost, but we cut Ashby out of that project for the same reasons. So those switches haven't been refreshed. All these, keep in mind, if we do reopen Ashby, are going to be largely costs that we will then have to implement. We also put a hold on classroom projector replacements and the audio components that are connected to those. I didn't do any planned refresh for the projectors. That's partially biting us right now as we're having increases of systems failures that then we're having to address. So we can't really keep kicking that particular can down the road. That was really the big broad items.
Oh, already unmuted. Thank you. That's great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure, anytime.
Thank you. All right. Appreciate that. And actually, before we close, Red, you had given a pretty broad list. I tried to write it down in case I missed something of the list. Is there a way to maybe get that list and maybe a timeline at some point of when these kind of budget things took place? You had given us areas like, capital and the licenses. And if you had that list that could get sent to us, that would be super helpful to put in the notes. Just because we don't have Robin here. I know I can listen to the tape again. Sorry, being lazy. If you have the list, send it. If not, I'll listen to the tape and make sure I got my notes right.
I can send it to you.
Okay, and the same with your thing, Jeremy. I feel like we've got additional resources there that might be helpful as we plan for the future of what might be needed. So if you have any material you want us to look at, let us know. Other than that, I would now entertain a motion to close.
I'll second.
Oh, I didn't first. Okay. I'll motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Then we go.
So I've got a
I should have said
backwards
so
effect.
moved, but
Yes. So I'll take a first from Lisa. I'll take Keenan second. Roll call. Lisa
Yeah.
Martin.
Yes.
Keenan Francois.
yes.
Kim Craven, I'm a yes. To all of you that helped out with our questions and answers, appreciate it very much. I know it's a lot of questioning for information that you all know, but appreciate your patience with us as we ramp up on our learning curve here. So appreciate it. Have a great day. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.